Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay, a podcast focusing on meditation, the near-death experience, and all things spiritual. Hello, this is Jay Spills with Inspire Me with Jay. My guest today is Pegi Robinson, who had a near-death experience. Pegi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. So why don't you tell our audience about your near-death experience?
Well, I actually had two. I had one at age 5 and one at age 25, and they were both very different. At age 5, I drowned. I was in a pond and I couldn't swim. I could dog paddle, and I found a board floating, and I thought I could use that as a raft. And I put my belly on it and I paddled myself out to the middle of the pond, and my brother saw me and he was doing laps. He was a good swimmer. He ran out and grabbed my board and started using it for a raft for himself, and I drowned. And I was struggling to get back up. I couldn't get up like past my eyes, and then I was underwater, and then the pond was so muddy that I quickly lost direction of what's up and down sideways. I didn't know which way to try to go back up anymore. And so I thought, I got to stop and think what to do. And I was so scared. And then I got choking and screaming underwater. And I was so frightened that I just was suddenly at the ceiling in the kitchen at our house right up the hill from the pond. And my mom and sister was in there getting stuff ready out of the cabinets to like a little picnic to bring down to the pond. My mom had told me and my brother go on down, her and my sister be down a little bit. And so I don't hear any earthly noise of them. I'm at the ceiling looking down at them, and I don't even hear their thoughts. I feel their emotions. This calm feeling of concentration, looking to what to get. And then I'm back in. That was like just like a moment. And then I'm back in that drowning scenario. And now my throat hurts so bad. It feels like it's going to burst. And suddenly it's like I went to sleep, because I'm waking up, and the water is no longer brown, dark, muddy. It's a light, transparent green, and it's very calming. And I realize I'm no longer struggling. I'm fine. So my 5-year-old mind, I think my parents lied to me. There's no such thing as drowning. And then I went down to the bottom of the pond, and fish are bumping into me. And I'm thinking that looks really cool. I could see their eyes and fins, tails, everything real close up. And then this little scene opens up, a memory of me one time in the living room looking in a fish tank. And this scenario somehow gives me the knowledge that the fish that are bumping into me, they know something I don't, that I'm dead. I'm like, oh, like they know the difference between something alive and dead, and they can tell I'm dead, and they're just bumping into me. Because I was wondering why aren't they afraid of me? They're just bumping right into me and going right in front of my face. And so I thought, well, this is, I thought, oh, I'm dead. Well, I thought, I don't want to be a dead girl and bomb this pond. And with that thought, I imagined the future, what it would be like seeing I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and I could see the future incident where my siblings and my mom and dad is in our station wagon going up and down the highway, the road to our house, and them saying, that's where Peg is. I'm thinking that I'm always going to be this dead girl to bomb this pond. They're never going to find me. And I thought, well, I don't want to be a dead girl bomb this pond. And with that thought, I started to go above, and I got right at the line of the water, and I realized my vision was different. Because if you stand back and look at a fish tank, you can see below the water, above the water, and the line. And that's how I was seeing the pond water. It was not like me under it or me over it. It was that perception. I thought, oh, my vision's different. And I thought, well, I'm bored with below. I want to go above. And with that thought, I rose above. And I thought, well, I don't want to go too fast. I'm just getting used to this. And so afraid of heights. Now I'm thinking I'm dead. I don't see my body or anything. But I'm controlling this all with my thoughts. And so I get to the treetops and I say to myself, well, that's high enough for now. And then I'm looking around and I'm thinking, this looks really cool. I can see clear over past the highway to High River. I can see clear down both ends of the train track behind me. And it's like a 360. You can just see all the way around. And I'm just enjoying this view and looking down and thinking, I could only see walking on the ground before. And the height of me as a little girl, my eyes, that was always my vision. And now I have this expanded vision. And I'm thinking, this is cool. And I'm thinking, well, I can hover. I guess I could fly. I'm thinking, which way should I go? Left or right? And then I don't see anyone, but I hear a woman's voice in front of me, a certain distance back and away. And she says, don't go yet. If they find you soon, you might go back. And I thought to myself, go back? That's not how death works. You don't go back. And I can remember every single moment in this situation, every thought. And I got thinking, well, there's advantage to this. I don't have to go in at dark. I don't have to eat my vegetables. I'm free. I don't have to listen to adults. And I'm thinking, I'll try to be good for a while because this woman, whoever she is, said don't go, but I think I'm going to go. And so I went towards the right, and it's like I thought about going right, and suddenly I'm there, and I'm at this house that I've never seen before and that I don't know it's in the area. But at this old, looks like an abandoned 2-story white house, and it has a side porch at the one corner. And I go to that door, and when I step in that doorway, I see in the kitchen there's a table, and there's adults, older adults, sitting all the way around the table. And they stop and look at me. And they had been like sitting there talking, and now I walk in, they stop. And I say, I'm trying to find kids to play with. And a man at the end of the table said, go try the graveyards. And so I leave, and now I'm back at the pond, and I go straight to the highway because I see 2 boys walking along the highway, and I'm trying to find kids to play with. And I'm walking along them, and I'm like, hey, where you going? What are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm thinking they're ignoring me just like my older siblings always did. And eventually the younger one starts answering me telepathic. He's like, oh, we've been fishing, and we're in a hurry back. And I realize that he don't see me. And I thought, well, this is no fun. So I go flying over this highway, just like a bird. I'm flying. And when I get in town, which is the west side of Marietta, Ohio, there's this great big billboard. And I couldn't figure out after this for years. I was like, that billboard creased me out. I felt like whenever I'd see it, it's like, I remember being like face dabbing that billboard. And then, so I dropped down into the west side where my grandparents lived. And there's kids running around the yard on a corner lot. And I just started running around playing ball with them. They was out there playing ball, and I'm running around playing, having fun. And then I realized they don't see me. So that loses the fun of it. And so I go down on the street towards my grandma's, and I'm going in and out through houses on my way. Instead of like, you would walk down the sidewalk to your grandma's. I'm going in and out of houses. So I'm curious what these houses look like, because we were real poor in the country, and we lived in a really small, tiny house. And we'd go trick-or-treating. Every time we'd knock on the door, say trick-or-treat in these big, beautiful houses, I'd peek in. I love seeing the beautiful big staircases and these hardwood floors. So I'm just like checking out these houses. And then at some point, because it seems like things might have happened simultaneously, because I remember that, but it's not like a sequence of what happened next after that, because the memory drops there. But I also have a memory hovering over the pond, thinking I never left the center of the pond, like she told me, but yet I remember doing these other things. So then I'm over the pond, and I remember looking down, and my mom and sister are there now. They have arrived at some point, and they're sitting on a bed sheet, and they're rubbing lotion on their arms and legs, talking to each other, and they're facing each other. And I'm thinking, they don't even know that I've drowned. They don't know that I'm gone. They don't know to go look for me. And my brother's doing laps on my board. And I had feelings about this. I had, looking at my mom and my sister, I felt sad thinking, because I died at 5, I'm never going to be old enough like my sister to have that immature conversation with my mom like she has. And then when I saw my brother, I felt anger. He didn't need that board, and he took it from me, and I died because he took my board. And so these feelings would wave in, and then they'd wave out. And so the next thing I know, I am hanging over my brother's shoulder, his right arm, and I'm dangling upside down. I can see the pavement of the road, and this water starts coming out of my mouth and down my brother's back. And that prompts my brother to say, Mom, can I put her down now? Because he's carrying his little sister's dead body to the house, and my mom's sister's walking up ahead to the house. And as I'm still dangling, I see my mom and sister both turn their heads to the left at the same time to look back at us. And my mom went, like, she's not dead. And she shook her head, yeah. And then they went on like whispering, talking between each other, and went up to the house. My brother set me down on the road on my feet, and he ran up to the house after him. And another thing I forgot, when I'm hovering over the pond at some point, I am given the knowledge, like it's download, that my family doesn't love me. I didn't know that. I mean, I knew my dad didn't like me. I knew my 4 older siblings, so I was a pain in the butt. My older sister's mentally incompetent, not incompetent, but disabled. And so it was no fault of her own. But the other 3, they just didn't like me. They always picked on me. But my mom, I thought my mom loved me, but this was the knowledge. My family didn't love me. And then inside my head, a clear voice said, children are sent here to be loved. That is why God sends them here. And I'm thinking, well, that's not fair. You just show me my family don't love me, and then you tell me, children are sent here to be loved, and I'm not loved. That's not right. So when I come back from the drowning, and I'm standing there on the road alone after my family went up to the road, I'm like smack dab with that information. Like, oh my gosh, they really don't love me. Why would I go on up to that house knowing this? And I'm thinking, drowning really was painful, but I'm not going to fight it this time, because I want to go back to where I was. I was having fun. I was free. So I chose that. And I didn't know the word suicide or anything like that, but I thought, why would I do that? And so I took a couple steps to go back to the pond on the road, and the voice I heard earlier, that's the woman's voice that said, don't go yet, she now appears. And she's hovering over the road, and it's an angel, and she's slim and has this white flowing, it's all kind of like transparent, this white gown goes down to her ankles and down to her wrists. And I started to go, and she says, no, don't. And I said, why? They don't love me. And she says, well, you'll have a lot of love someday. And I said, where will I find it? And she points right to Belpre, because one side of the right is Belpre, the other side, the left was Marietta, this pond. And she's pointing to Belpre, and then she's gone. So I went on up to bed, and I was different. When I walked in that house, I knew at 5 years old, you're going to have to be your own mother.
I spent several years of my life stressed, anxious, and depressed. I needed to find something that would make my life work. For me, that was meditation. With meditation, I found the peace of mind that I was looking for. I found the happiness. And I found a way to improve every area of my life, my emotional life, my spiritual life, my relationships. I was able to discover things about myself. I can give you the tools to meditate. I will walk you through the process and hold your hand. Whether you're a beginner to meditation who's never meditated, or whether you're someone who's tried meditation and it just never seemed to work, we can make it work. Meditation is something that everyone can do, and I can show you how. Check out my course on meditation.
You're going to have to take care of yourself. You're on your own now. And I got my nightgown on and climbed in bed, and I picked up a nursery rhyme book and opened up to my favorite one, which was A Woman Living in a Shoe. And this picture, I just stopped. And somehow I knew this picture of the kids' beds lined up in a row in this A Woman Living in a Shoe story, that was going to be my life someday. I was going to have a lot of kids. And I was meant to love unloved children like me. And so some strange things happened after that for a little while. Like I went to Sunday school. I was coloring a picture of Jesus with children. Suddenly, and I'm singing Jesus Loves Me over and over, and I got so worked up and excited. Suddenly, that picture was real. I was actually standing in heaven, and Jesus was actually sitting on the rock, just like the picture. 2 kids standing beside him, and one on his lap. And I'm standing there wanting to sit on Jesus' lap so bad that I want to push that kid off, but I don't. I know I got to be good. And Jesus looks at me in these eyes of this love. And as I'm standing there, not moving, something says to me, Jesus loves children of every color. Don't forget that. Never forget that. You know, as I'm older now, I look back and I think that's so intelligent, because I was coloring, you know, the skin colors of these kids, the clothes on these kids, and the hair color. And to be told Jesus loves children of every color, it was just like I couldn't have made this up. It was so perfect. And then right after that, or, you know, in time frame, I'm not sure, sequence, but our family had went to a lake right up the road not long after my drowning to go fishing. We had all 5 kids, my mom and dad, and they all set up and started fishing. And I started feeling led. First time in my life I felt this feeling. It has come on off and on throughout my life. And I started feeling led, like, come over here. There's something over here. Come over here. Go over here. And I started to go, and I seen my mom. And it's like my vision was just like went straight close to her face, even though it was far away from her. And she told my brother John, that had caused my drowning and stick to board. She said, go with her. And he was mad. And then my sister Terry come running. She said, what are you doing, to John? Because they were best buddies. And he says, it's not my fault she drowned. Why do I have to babysit her? And she said, oh, you don't have to. Come with me. So they went somewhere else. So I went on feeling led. And I went, and there's this beautiful lake on the left, and on the right was this ugly area. It was so dry, it sticks and dry, you know, like it had flooded and dried out, you know, the cracked mud and everything. And something was insistent I go over there. I went over there, and I say, I'm 5 years old, and I'm standing there, I'm thinking, ew, I don't want to be here. And then I saw a flower growing out from under a rock. And I sat down and looked at it, and it's like the angel that talked to me earlier. It's like the communication started again. And I'm sitting there looking at this flower, and I was like, how did you grow here? There's nothing here. And you're just like, it was like dancing in the wind, this beautiful flower all by, like, how did you grow out from under a rock? And then it started this communication. It showed me visions. Like, first it was this of little girls in Sunday school, and their pretty dresses and long hair and bows and shiny shoes and fancy socks, and then me, I'm this plain girl, poor, hand-me-down clothes that are too big, this pixie haircut my mom always made me get. And then it showed my aunts sitting around, my mom, my grandma sitting around talking about what their favorite flower is. And they were all trying to impress each other by saying some fancy flower that you probably get at a flower shop. And then this voice said, that you are, like, I didn't need all showered like those girls, that I was like this wildflower, and those girls was like those fancy flower shop flowers, that I would have a long, hard road growing up, but because of it, I would have a strength inside of me that most girls would never know. I would have the will of a wildflower inside of me. And that's why I named my book Will of a Wildflower, because I started writing my story and I thought that I can't call it anything else. And so that was mostly the drowning. There's some strange spiritual things, happened, but I was just a different kid for a little while. And then things went to normal. And then I was 25 when I had the second NDE.
Mm-hmm. Well, was it hard when you were told that you weren't loved? Because I would think that would be devastating. Did you kind of wonder, why are you telling me this? What an awful thing to tell me.
No, I'm fine, And when you're in that realm, it's like you get a knowing. Yeah, I argued with the angel when she says, if they find you soon, you might go back. I'm like, that's not how death works. But when I was shown and told that, it was just like, oh, it was not questioned. And like I say, and then when I come back, standing on the road, and my mind went to that, because it was like staring me in the face when my mom and sister and brother just went up the road and left me standing there alone. They weren't, thank God you're okay. They weren't, tucking me in bed and, pampering over me. Like I instinctively thought I should have some attention here. I was so sick. I had that pond water in my belly, and I was so sick and so weak I could hardly stand. And they just left me. And it was just knowledge.
Did you ever develop a relationship with your mom and dad or your siblings? Do you think they ever came to love you?
No, they will. If they was on here right now, they would say we never liked her. In fact, we hated her. In fact, there was times they tried to have me killed. It's just my family. It's just the way they are. But at 5 years old, I had no way of knowing what was on their hearts and minds. I assumed because I loved everybody. I thought in time, that my siblings would come to like me, my dad would come to like me, and it just never happened.
Hmm.
And so I
Maybe,
just accepted it finally.
yeah. Maybe it was part of your plan to have parents that didn't love you because it would help teach you what you need to do. I think you said that, and to help you have a certain way of looking at the world.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want people to take away from my story is that because I, continued on to be, neglected and abused and things. And I want people to think about and, reading my book, hearing my story, that, not just the NDE, but, say there's a kid comes into play with your kids and maybe they're really skinny and they're really poor looking. Um, Ask them to have dinner, don't send them home because I was always sent home when it's time to eat, and I was sitting on the sidewalk and I'd have nothing to eat because my family moved to town and when I was 10, and so everybody was gone. I was youngest. I was home alone. There was no food, and I just wandered the streets and I'd make friends, but then it was time to eat. I would go home and there's nothing to eat. If there was stuff, I didn't know how to cook it, and so I went very, very hungry for a long time. And if you see a kid that's just, a slow learner, that's shy, just get a little involved, see what's going on with them. I'm not talking about crazy child, services reports all the time, but take an interest. See if they can go with your family somewhere. Let them spend the night. I mean, just just to let people know there are these kids out there that's always on the outside looking in.
Do you think that woman that you saw was like an angel or
Yeah.
someone? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think she was an angel because, I heard that voice. I didn't see anybody. But later on the road, it was an angel. I saw her.
You think she kind of stayed with you your whole life?
I do. I do now. I mean, I wouldn't have thought, through years, but I've come to as I gotten older to kind of put the pieces together. And I think she's been with me always.
Did you sort of feel like, well, at least my angel loves me, God loves me?
I mean, I didn't think of the time, my angel loves me because, I put that away. I forgot about it. And then after my second NDE, about a month later, I was just like kind of in the same situation, only now with my first husband's family. There's a big Catholic family, 12 kids, and they had these big parties, the holidays, and they never liked me. I come from a poor, abusive family. I was trash. And so they just never accepted me. And with my second NDE, I lost my twins. And then a couple months later, I was pregnant and I lost that baby as well. And here they are having this big party right after this. And nobody can say, I'm sorry, you lost the twins. How are you doing? Nobody ever asked me once anything about what I went through, especially in the hospital. I died. I was in the hospital for a week. I had surgery. They had called my whole family and said that I wasn't going to make it. And nobody could say. And so I went outside and I sat in the wet grass alone. I just want to get away from everybody. I looked up the night sky, up at the stars, and I just said, God, I give up. If they can't care about their own niece and nephews that died, there's no way they're ever going to care about me. So I was kind of in that unloved situation with family again. And I looked up the night sky, and all of a sudden, it was like this great big, you remember the outdoor movies you used to
Hmm.
go to the drive-ins. It was
Yeah.
like this big screen in the sky, like a drive-in, and it showed my drowning from front to back. And I had completely forgot all about it. And when it like took me over, it wasn't like I was just watching it; I was in it. And so it took me over. When it was over, I was like was let loose, and I sat back and I thought, did I drown when I was little? So the next day, I went to my mom's house. We didn't have phone then, so I drove to her house and I said, did I drown when I was little? And she said, yeah, you did. And she told me the reason it was never talked about is because Her first child had died at 9 months old, and my dad's family blamed her, and she didn't want them to know that I had died, and and come back, and that was that bad, and that they would blame her. I mean, it would have been her fault. I mean, she told us to go down by ourselves. It was like 5 and 8, and so that's why it's never spoken. So I went to my sister's house because I knew she was there, and I said, "Did I drown when I was little?" And I only had 2 questions then: was did I drown, and how did you find me? Because in my NDE, I have no memory of the rescue. And she says, "Oh yeah, she remembered it." And I went to my brother's house. He's, "Yeah, I got in trouble that day because of you." And my mom told me later, she says, "I thought more about that." And she says, when she noticed I wasn't there, she hollered to my brother, says, "Where's Peg at?" He didn't know. And she says, "Well, go to where you saw her last." And she said he kept diving down and diving down until he found me and pulled me up. So how long I was underwater, I can only guess, 15 minutes. I don't know. From the time my mom to walk down the road, set down her sheet and sit there and talk to my sister, and then who knows how long before she noticed I wasn't there, and who knows how long it took my brother to keep going down and down until he found me. And my husband told me, he says, here recently, he says, that pond isn't that deep. I mean, deep for a 5-year-old. But I forget what he says, something about when they brought the highway in, they had dumped stuff there and it created this hole. And so that's how this pond started. Now, it's a popular fishing place now. It's called Catfish Paradise. But back then, I think my family's probably the only one that went swimming and fishing there.
So you, in your second NDE, is that where you saw the view of your first NDE?
No, I saw the view of my first NDE a couple months after my second NDE. My second NDE, I was pregnant for twins. I had 3 little boys at home. And I started having pain. I was 2 months, and I was already showing a little. And I called my doctor and I said, "I think it's a tubal pregnancy," because he had done a surgery. My ex had made me get my tubes tied when I was 20, and I found out when I was 25 I get them reversed. So I got them reversed, and the doctor says this would give me a 5% chance to a pregnancy. He says every woman has a 5%, and this will give you an extra 5, so 10% chance. Well, I got that. And because at the end of the week, I couldn't even walk. The pain was so bad, and I started bleeding. And we lived an hour away from the hospital. So my husband drove me to the hospital, left our kids with his parents. And the pain was so bad that right before we got to the hospital, all of a sudden it faded in a way that I knew, a knowing I was dying. And I didn't want to tell my husband. I just prayed to God that I wouldn't die right there along the highway, because I pictured he would pull over and be so frantic, and like cars would have to pull over and see what's wrong with this guy. I didn't want that scenario. And so I just prayed to God that just let me get to the hospital before I die, and don't do this to him. And we got to the hospital. He no more got me in a wheelchair and pushed me in and started to tell, they gave him the forms. And I said, first thing I said to the nurse when he pulled me in was, "I think it's a tubal pregnancy." I said, "I don't know if I'm going to throw up or pass out." And they put me in a chair and just started down that long hallway. And suddenly my head hit my chest and I was gone.
What, did you see anything in your second NDE once you were gone?
Yeah. So as soon as I was gone, I was in, like I would call, a tunnel. It was dim, and there was this loud wind speed. I shot like a rocket through space, like this tunnel. I was enclosed in this small, long tube, but I could see through the walls to tell I was going through space. And every now and then there'd be a knock, and every time I heard that knock, I thought I'm going through another galaxy. Every time I heard a knock. And then all of a sudden, that loud, bumpy, fast, noisy ride stopped, and I'm suspended in white light, and everything's perfectly still and quiet. I look down, and I don't see me at all. There's nothing, but I feel just like me. And I thought, wow, it's real. The whole heaven, God, Jesus, Bible, it's real, because, I'm not in a casket. I'm here. And I'm exist, and I've been taken somewhere way far up. So I guess this is heaven. And I'm thinking, why am I alone? Did I do something that I don't know about, like I'm not aware of? Am I going to be alone for eternity? And then I look around this bright white light that I'm just hovering in, And I look over to my right, and I see an outline of a person, just head, shoulder, down the arms. And then I continue to look, and there's this whole panel of them, maybe 5, I don't know. And they're standing there all together, shoulder to shoulder. And then my eyes drop as if I have eyes, because I feel like I have everything. And there's a second row sitting in front of the row standing there sitting. And then I see one sitting up front and center. And I think that has to be God. And I start telling him off. And that's not something that you think if you ever go to heaven that you're going to do. This is exactly what I was doing. I was screaming and throwing a fit. Like, I cannot stay here. I have kids to raise. It's not happening. Like, basically, hell no, I won't go. And then a scene opened up on my left. It was there on the right, and a scene opened up on the left, and it's this colorful scene in this bright white light. And it's this scenario, like it's a little movie playing, interactive, like kind of like I've seen everything else before. It's like you see it, but it's not like flat on a screen, like you're in it, you're living it. As it would be like if you just walked in a grocery store and there's the cashier and she's standing there at the counter, and there's this boy in front of the counter and he's stomping his feet screaming there's something he wants and he wants it right now. And there's a mom and a dad off to the side. I see the mom more than dad, and she's saying, no, you can't have it. She was unaffected by his tantrum. And I realized that was God's way of showing me, this is how you're acting, because I'm a young mother. This is something I understand. You're acting like a spoiled child. I need to calm down. I'm not going to get my way. And then I heard God's voice telepathically in a firm, loving, but authoritative voice say, the answer was no. I wasn't going back. The answer was no. And then I see a physical me across from me, straight across. And I'm standing there because I'm a viewer in this now. I'm a viewer of me across. And I am spewing out every abuse I ever went through and explaining to God, this is why I can't stay here. I can't have one thing that happened to my kids that happened to me. I've got to be there and protect them. You know, earth is horrible. It's not safe for these children. They can't be down there without a mother's love and protection. I was a very, very protective mother. I didn't let nobody hardly ever watch my kids, except once in a while my husband's mom. And so I'm spewing all this stuff, and it's just like somebody turned up a record player, my voice, like the speed, and like made it go real fast. It was over. And I felt that was God's way of letting me know. We know. You don't have to keep going on. We know. We get it. And so then I say that I agree to stay. If my kids' lives be better off without me, I agree to stay. If not, I beg to return. And then I believe it's Jesus, because over to the side on the right, between where I was standing and where this panel was at, I see a man standing there, just his back, not moving, just standing straight after me from behind. And all of a sudden, my physical me, like I'm no longer observer. I am, myself. And I'm like this, standing right beside him, and we drop down out of heaven, just like that. And suddenly we're over top the trailer we lived at the time, and it's nighttime. And then we drop down lower to where we can see past the roof or at the ceiling. And my 3 little boys are in there discussing the fact that mom has died. So this is a future. Mm-hmm. And my middle son, Jeremy's very sensitive, and he says to his brother, Matthew, older brother, he says, I don't care that you say mom is dead. I want her back, and I want her back right now. And I felt his pain so bad that I retracted, and I'm back in the white light, and I'm physical me, because I see my hands come up from my face as I'm sobbing. And I took total responsibility that I'm dead. I'm not going back. It's my fault the twins died. It's my fault I died. It's my fault my boy's going to be raised motherless. And I accepted it, and I thought, well, I'll be patient here, because my boys will be old men and die someday. They'll join me. I'll get to see them again. That's the best I can hope for. I'm compromising here, not compromising. I'm accepting my fate. And then all of a sudden, this big, huge wave of fear come over me. I'm like, what if my sons hate God because they lost their mother at such a young age? Because I've heard of that happening before. And they hate God, and they never come to heaven. I never get to see him. And then I'm just horribly blubbering. And then I realize I am at my knees in front of God, but to his left, not his right, like the Bible says that Jesus sits on the right of God. To his left was Jesus sitting there, and I just see the bottom of like his feet. And I say, my hands come up, and I say, who else will teach them about you? And I'm back in that wheelchair, just like that. And I used to say that was it, back in a wheelchair, just like that. But there's a sliver of a memory between there that I didn't talk about until somebody asked me one time something like, no, I never saw myself from below. I'm like, oh, yes, I did. The memory come to me. For a split second, I am in the ceiling, fluorescent light, looking down, and I see my long brown hair and my head bent over, and there's two nurses standing behind me talking. And something's telling me, get in there. And I'm like, I can't, I don't know how, just get in there, go. And I'm back in my body, just like that. And I'm thinking, what the hell was that? I was just in heaven accepting it. I thought this never happened in the history of the world. I could not breathe a word of this. Now, here I am, my pain's gone, my nausea's gone. I feel fine. But my head is saying, you're not fine because you were just dead. And now you're back. God gave you your life back. Now, how are you going to save your life? Because I called my doctor all week and said, I think it's a tubal pregnancy. He kept saying, no. I did an ultrasound earlier. Both babies are in the uterus. So now what am I going to do? I have no pain. I have nothing physically, but my NDE, which I didn't know what NDE was, but this thing just happened. And I know God just sent me back, and by God, I better save my life here. So my doctor comes, does an exam. He says, hey, your uterus is intact. You're still pregnant. Why do you keep saying it's a tubal pregnancy? I told you it's not a tubal pregnancy. I couldn't say a word. I could not say what just happened because I was afraid they put me in the psych ward. My oldest sister is mentally ill. I've been to mental hospitals with her to help her transition and her visits and, her emergencies. I've been through her. I know what they do with mentally ill people. I felt they would think I was nuts. And I thought, I can't go to a psych ward and be checked out mentally when I have something going on that just killed me. If he says it isn't tubal pregnancy, then what is it? Because I'm thinking in my head, you just died here. So the only option I had was go home and die and my sons find my dead body and be traumatized, or say, which is what I did, I'm not going home. He looked at my husband like, what's wrong with her? And my husband was like, oh no. So my husband went home, went to bed. Doctor went home, went to bed. The doctor had said, well, if it make you feel better, since you live an hour away, I can admit you for the night, but nothing's wrong. They put me in the bed. Long story short, the next morning they took me to ultrasound, and I had internal bleeding filling my entire abdominal cavity clear up to my chest. It's the biggest tubal pregnancy they ever saw. And they called my whole family in and said she's not going to make it. The hospital notified my family and said that I wasn't going to make it for my whole family to come in. And I'm sitting, and when they did the ultrasound, they took me down the basement to do the ultrasound, and that's where they do the surgeries, is in the basement. But they took me back upstairs to sign my name. When you know you're a goner, when they have you sign every organ separately. I mean, I'm an organ donor, right? So just take it. I said, don't you have a paper that says just take it all? Because this was time consuming. And they wasn't very nice either. They knew they were sitting here with this woman, 25 years old, 2 months pregnant with twins. They just called my whole family and said she's not going to make it, and I'm signing all these papers. And so they walked away, and they left me sit in that room alone. I didn't know then that they had called my whole family, and I found that out after my surgery. But I'm sitting there, and I got angry. I was very, very angry because, you're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm 25, I'm so healthy. And I've always looked young for my age, so I looked like I was 15 probably. And I'm healthy, and I'm going to die. I got 3 little boys. I'm praying for these twins. I'm going to die. I'm 25. I'm going to die. And I just sat alone in this room. I mean, when they saw the ultrasound, the nurse's eyes bulged. She jumped up. She moved the screen of the ultrasound where I couldn't see it. Her chair fell backwards. And she jumped up. She grabbed the phone on the post and yelled, Dr. White, stat, and ran out of the room. and my sister was with me. And I said, I'm a goner. And I thought they waited too long. And all night long while I was in the hospital room, when they kept me overnight, I kept dying. I didn't have any more NDEs, but I kept passing out. And every time I come back, after a while, after coming back, I said, God, I know you can't keep bringing me back. Please just keep me alive till morning, where maybe the doctor will come in early and find out what's going on and fix it. Just give me that chance. I knew I was on borrowed time here. From the moment I came back into the wheelchair after my NDE, I knew the clock was ticking, that I did not have long, that I was given a chance, like maybe they'll save her life. And I waited all night, and that was a long night to wait, thinking I'm not going to live till morning. And now here I am, finally, they saw it, and they finally know what it is. They're finally going to take me to surgery, but they've just left me in this room after they got, signature of my organs. I felt like my organs is more important than me. And so they took me finally in surgery, and I was laying there, and I looked up at my doctor, and he looked down at me, and he had a tear coming down his cheek. And I turned my head, and I thought, buddy, you deal with this death, because I told you all week is what I'm thinking, I'm thinking, no, you're not getting absolution from me. And I turned my head like, don't even shed a tear for me now. And of course I woke up from surgery and was fine. And my doctor come in, and he says the biggest tool pregnancy the hospital ever saw. He said there'll probably be other doctors poking their head in your door to look at you. He says, you're the talk of the hospital. And I thought, talk of the hospital? He says, you're famous around here, is what he said. And I thought, I don't want to be famous because I just lost my twins. And I'm still feeling like this is all my fault. And I have all these emotions. I have this anger. I have this death experience that I can't breathe a word to anybody about. And so then a couple months later, I was pregnant again. I was sure I was going to die. We went to a family reunion, and everybody's lined up to eat. And this is before I remember the drowning, because I hadn't lost the next miscarriage yet. I'd lost it that day. But so everybody's lined up, this big family, and they're looking at all the food on these picnic tables, and they're all in line, and we're at the back of the line, and I started hearing a child cry clear, like up past the front of the line, way out, like in this distance. And I kept going up the line, like closer to the noise of crying, and I kept saying, do you hear a child crying? No. And all they could do was just look at this food, decide what they want. Nobody cared. And so I just kept going, and I went past the line, out past the pavilion, and now I'm standing out in this field, and I'm looking around, and I no longer hear the crying, but I felt that lead, which I didn't understand then. This is what that is. I felt this lead. There's something, just like after the drowning, when I felt there's something I'm supposed to go find, it was the exact same feeling. There's something I'm supposed to find here. And then I looked, something inside said, look over at that patch of grass. So I looked, why would anything be in that patch of grass? It was like, go. And I went, and here was a little tiny toddler, a little boy, face down in a ditch drowning. And his body was like barely twitching. And I reached down the back of his shirt and picked him up and stood him on his feet. And he had this water just pouring out his face. And he looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. And he ran over to the end of the pavilion. His family, his parents are standing there. And they're going, what? And he's pointing like she's right there. They couldn't see me. To this day, I don't understand. They could not see me. And he's pointing, she's right there. And they're like, what? They did not see me. And I knew at that moment I miscarried. And so, the long story short on that, okay, that was 1986. In 2010, I was working as a counselor. And this big guy come in and sat down at my desk. And I recognized his last name. And I said, did you used to go to those family reunions? He said, yeah. And I said, I'm going to tell you something. I never told anybody this story. I completely forgot all about it. And I told him about this little boy drowning. He leaned way back and looked at me. He said, that was you? He said, that was my little brother. He swears to this day an angel saved him. He said, I can't wait to tell Mom that we now know who that woman was. He says, but he swears an angel saved him. I have no explanation for that. But there was a lot of strange things like that happened after that. That I was led, and I ended up saving people's lives. I would just like was in a car one day, and something said, go to the house right now. I didn't know who lived there. I knocked on the door, and it happened to be ex-sister-in-law of mine that was babysitting her nephew. This is her sister's rented house. I had no idea who lived there. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm babysitting my nephew. I said, take me to him right now. And he was in there choking on Easter basket grass. Another time, I'm at the house, and I just had this feeling, I've got to go up the top of my road. And my husband's like, why? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's learning by now, something's going on with her. And he followed me. And here there was a car wreck at the top of the hill. And it was off the side of the road. And it looked at first like it was just parked, but it hit a tree. And there's two guys in the back that was ejected. And then two up front had their heads leaning on the dash, and they had broke their necks. And things just happened like that. Like I was being led. And I know people think, oh, that sounds so silly, me talking about the wildflower story. But that being led, I found all those years later, and didn't comprehend it until even more years later, was, I believe, a gift I got during the drowning. That like after the second NDE, and I remembered the drowning, and I started remembering these little spiritual experiences I had, like the Sunday school experience where I was coloring and saw Jesus on the rock, and then, the flower. And I didn't breathe a word about this because they make no sense. They sound so childish. Well, I was a child. And then, these things happen. I still don't know where to put it in my head, how to process it. Now I know, at 61 years old, that we are changed after a near-death experience. Even children. It doesn't matter if you know the word NDE, the understand the concept of after effects of NDE, that how you're changed afterwards, how you might have some little psychic abilities, how you may see spirits, how when you may know right before someone passes, and these kind of things. I didn't know. But regardless whether you know and understand them, they happen anyway. They were happening after I had my drowning, and they happened after 25 after I had my tubal. And then throughout my life, I started realizing these other little things that happened. That was all part of this. In my teenage years, I was kidnapped and raped at 16. And just as the man started to approach me in his cot, he'd take me to this little shed, and he started to approach me, and I knew he was about to rape me. And I had been praying that I wasn't even on this earth because my family didn't love me. And now this man was black. We live in Southeast Ohio, and they hated black people. And I knew the stigma that was going to come from this because I couldn't fight. Because months earlier, two men attacked me and tried to rape me. And I fought and screamed till finally someone stepped out of the house and heard me and come and rescued. I couldn't do that here. I'm a fighter. I don't put up with crap. I'm that kind of girl. I had to fight to keep myself safe my whole life. And now here I am in this shed and all these tools. I'm thinking, what tool would he kill me with? And he had already taken me to a lake and threatened to throw me in it and said nobody'd ever find me. And so I'm trapped and I have no way out. So I'm praying, God, I wish I wouldn't be on this earth. And suddenly I am in the night sky among the stars looking down at earth. And the people that say earth's flat, they're full of it because it looks just like a globe, like you see in science. And I had my body, I had my long brown hair, my skinny little body, I had my jeans and my shirt on, and I'm just basking out there like an astronaut without a spaceship. And I'm looking down at earth and I'm thinking, it's just as weightless as I am. We're both just basking in space. And there was a breeze that blew my hair, like when you're at the beach, that wonderful, warm, comforting breeze that just like hugs you. And I knew I was safe, and I knew my body was down there being raped. Couldn't feel it, couldn't see it, couldn't hear it, nothing. I was totally detached. But I knew that I was just rescued. And I didn't care why. Then after a few minutes, I thought, wait a minute, I'm 16. I don't want to be up here. I want to live my life. So I was back. It was like when you're ready to go back, you can go back. And I was back, and it was over. And I had no memory, and to this day have no memory of that whatsoever. And I felt, was that a prayer answered? Because I was praying. Was it a wish come true? Do I have some ability? What just happened? And as I'm, like I say, older now, and I'm still trying to make sense of it, I believe that God rescues us. Abused children, women during rape. Say I've heard of people with NDEs, they were just about to crash and they left their body. They didn't have the impact. They didn't have to suffer and feel the injuries. A plane's about to crash and they're gone. They're outside the window. And I believe God rescues us and just can pull us out and saying, you're not going to experience this. Because I think if I would have experienced that, I would have committed suicide. Because it was just like putting the straw that broke the camel's back. And after that, I was put in protective custody because my stepdad admitted to the police that he was going to kill me. It was his daughter. My stepdad said, she's my daughter. It's my right. I'm going to kill her as soon as I get her home. That's exactly what he told the cops. So I was put in protective custody. And so when I got back to school later and got sent back home and those things, little spiritual things start happening. And then I would just shut it all out. And then one day I was about to turn 18, and I thought, made a promise to myself and a promise to God that I would not forget what it was like to be abused and neglected, and that someday I would do something for abused kids. And I saw this scene of the old black and white negatives, and it come in a roll. It was like that, of all these children I didn't know, and it was letting me know the child abuse will continue and continue and continue. It will never stop. It will always continue. It's like face after face. And so I ended up, after I got married and had my kids, I became the youngest foster parent for Washington County, Ohio, was a neighboring county to ours, and started taking in kids. And then it was family. It was my disabled sister, her son I had taken, and it was a few years before we got to adopt him. But then my mom had 3 boys, and her third husband had her daughter didn't want her 3 boys, so we'd had them. So now I had 6 boys. And then my cousin died. She had 2 girls, needed a home, took in as 2. Just kept doing that. And then one day I was looking in the newspaper and it said therapeutic foster care. I thought, well, I've been doing this free for years. I might as well get paid for it. So I started doing therapeutic. I ended up having 60 kids in and out of our home in 16 years. And we ended up adopting 10, which the first being my nephew, but then 9, 2 sibling groups, 1 of 5, 1 of 4. So, I didn't put this together. This is what I intended to do my whole life. It was reflection. As I got older, it just felt like it was all meant to be. And I think maybe all of our lives are. We just aren't always given the insight, that this is the way it's going to be in your life.
Yeah, I had heard of small children who were sexually molested that would sometimes be taken out of their body and taken to a different realm. So I had heard that idea before.
Yeah, and the first time I told my NDE at a group, a nurse was in the audience, and she said, she says, I'm a psychiatric nurse, and that's very common with children. I hear that a lot, that during abuse, they're just taken out of there. And they're thinking, psychiatrists are thinking it's a psychotic break or something. I'm thinking, it's a rescue. God is rescuing us. There's times I can say there was no rescue. I fought and I won, or I fought and I lost, but there are times that we can be given that divine intervention. And I think a lot of times we just dismiss it and go on and don't stop and think, how did that happen? Why did that happen? Who caused this to happen?
Well, that event when you were 16 might, in some people's mind, be classified as an NDE as well, because even though you didn't actually die, you were traumatized and taken out. It
was definitely an out-of-body experience, at least. So yep.
I was going to say, so you actually do your own show on your own podcast about NDEs as well. Were you sort of motivated based on your own? What's it called?
NDETV.
And you interview NDEs.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I just started last year.
So
it was a year, March. Mm-hmm. Yeah, March of last year I started. I had no idea what I was doing. You learn as you go.
So you sort of feel like your mission is to help children who are abused and neglected?
It was. I made that my life. I made it a career. I was child abuse investigator for years, and then went to another state and did that there. I worked at a social worker at a mental hospital. I worked in an emergency room, actually where I had died in a wheelchair. I worked there for quite a while as an advocate, and then I was accepted to law school, but decided not to because our adopted children started having a lot of behavioral problems, and so I was like, it's not a good idea. And I worked as a counselor in a women's maximum security prison, and just did a lot of. I like to move around and try out different things. Once I master something, I'm bored. And so I take on something really difficult I don't understand, kind of like with a podcast. You have no idea what you're doing. And then once you master it, then I get bored. Once I master it, I get bored. I want to find something else to do. But the foster care I did the longest. And so, but now my husband and I just retired. Our kids are all grown, and we're not going to be doing any more foster care and adoption. And so I just do my podcast, and that's what I enjoy doing. I wrote my memoir in, I think it was 2017. And when I had no intention of doing that, it's just one morning I got this vision, and it just helped put everything in perspective. I realized that I had been pushing the abuse when I was a child and the spiritual experiences under the rug just the same. And that I had to tell the abuse stuff for people to appreciate the spiritual stuff that happened. And so I just grabbed my laptop and just immediately started writing, and it was done in 3 months. I hardly slept and ate. I just started it. And then when I typed the end, we was staying in a camper. My husband was working away, so we was living in a camper. And when I typed the end, it had been raining. He got rained out, and he come in, and the sun come out through the sidelights, skylight, I guess you call it, of the camper. The sunbeam come in, landed on my book. And I'm like, as soon as I typed the end, the sunbeam come in, landed on my book. And I just was kind of being silly. And so it was a special moment, you write, type the end. It'll be the only book I ever write. I'm not an author. And so I grabbed my cell phone and took pictures of the sunbeam. And that was on a Friday. On the Monday, when my husband went back to work, I got looking through my pictures. And there is this beautiful pink flower in this sunbeam in the pictures. So when you see this pink flower on my channel, that's that picture I took of that. And then there was other strange things in the picture that I took pictures of. And when you look on my screen of my channel, we call it not trademark, watermark is one of those little pictures. These just really funny things shows up in light. So I just felt like it was God saying, well done. I actually prayed that night, and I was like, God, was that like a sign? And I felt like he was saying, what more do I have to do to show you?
So your NDEs are in your memoirs then, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's part 1 and part 2. It starts out, just a little background on my family, goes right into the drowning in detail, and then goes through all the abuse and up till about the time I get married at 18, and then part 2 starts.
Mm-hmm. And what is your memoirs called? Just the Memoirs of Pegi Robinson?
It's called The Will of a Wildflower.
And is it available on Amazon or different stores?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if people want to get in contact with you, how can they get in contact with you?
ndetv@yahoo.com.
Okay. Well, thanks for being on the show.
And I spell my name Pegi. So it's Pegi Robinson.
Yeah, I'll give a link in the description. But thanks for being on the show. Is there one last word you'd like to leave the audience with?
Just kind of like what I had said, I think when we started, that I hope what people take away, because people love to hear the NDE stories, and then I don't think they really absorb the magnitude of what we are saying here. Oh, that's an interesting story, go on. But beyond that is, think about the abused kids, the neglected kids. Just keep your eye open for a little kid or a teenager that just seems maybe too troubled, too quiet, maybe needs to sit down, talk to, instead of, oh, you can never see my child again. Sit in a room and talk to them. What's going on? Why are you like this? How can we help you?